Hi, this is Marina from frocksandfrolics.com. Welcome to another part of our sew along for the Ottobre celebration magazine. We are going to continue on with sewing our Pea-Coat, Charlie Brown coat here, and today we're going to cut everything out. So I'm hoping you enjoy this. I've just come back from Joann's, which is my local shop with some fabrics that I want to use, and I think they're actually quite nice. I want to go through the shopping list that is on your Ottobre pattern that I took to the shop with me. So what you need to do is look on the materials here, and that will tell you exactly how much you need of everything. So I'm just going to talk you through what's on here and what's right in front of me here, what I actually bought. So let's begin with that. Now what you can do to find out how much fabric you need is have a look up here, see what size you do. So if you want to do 146 like me, that means I need 150 centimeters of that fabric. That would be 1.5 meters, and I took 2 yards just to be on the safe side. So that is for my outer fabric, which you see here, and I chose a really nice felted wool, which will be very warm. It'll be really nice. It also attracts all the fluff, but I think you wear it outside, so if you just get over it with a lint catcher, I think it'll be fine and look really gorgeous. Now, as a lining, they suggest a satin, which I never really like very much. I bought myself a fairly smooth cotton. It has got a brush on it, but it's still very smooth because I don't want any of the clothes underneath it to stick too much. So you're looking for a fairly smooth fabric, but you can use a nice cotton for that. And I thought this would go really nicely for the inside. Then it goes on to explain what kind of fusibles you need. And they suggest fusible non-woven interfacing. Hang on, that is a very light one, and I've got that here. But this is probably the one that we're going to use to interface the front part. And for that, I actually prefer to use a different one, which is not in your instructions. It's called Shape Flex Iron-On Woven Cotton Interfacing. Why I bought this here is because I like the fact that it's woven. It is much nicer than the non-wovens because it works with the fabric a bit better. And so I like this for that. This is probably why they also suggest that you get yourself some fusible knit. They say 1.30 meters of G785, and let's see if that was the same. What did I get? I can just see what that's called. That says EK 130 Easy Knit, would be the equivalent of the fusible knit G785, and this is very similar to this stuff here, because it will move with whatever you iron it onto, and that's why it's on here, and they suggest 1.30 meters of that. So I got myself that. Then they suggest metal shank buttons. Now, I haven't got any metal shank buttons. In fact, I have got no buttons at all yet because I didn't like any of the buttons at Joann's, and I think I'm going to go to the market. I'm going to find myself some really big buttons which maybe pick up on one of those colors in here, like red, orange and yellow. So I'm not gonna buy any buttons just yet. It's a shame that I didn't buy them when I was at the market last time, but I will decide what size I'm gonna do them so that we can work in the buttonholes, and we're going to do bound buttonholes. I like bound buttonholes, and I'll tell you why I like them better than the machine buttonholes for anything like a coat. When you have a sewing machine that's domestic, and it doesn't matter how good your sewing machine, it very unlikely will make beautiful buttonholes that are suitable for a coat, you know, like the really big ones with a round end on the end. So it probably won't do that, and because of that I'd rather not even try, because I know it's going to look fairly poxy and not very professional. So I've got really big poppers, and I got these in black. Then I needed 2 small shoulder pads, and I bought mine from Joann's. And I have to say that I am not a great fan of buying any of these things from, whether that is pop-up buttons, whether that's threads or shoulder pads at Joann's, because it really is overpriced unless you get a bargain. I think this was $7. I mean, seriously, right? For these, if you fish around a little bit, go on eBay or somewhere else. If you plan to make more jackets, just get yourself some shoulder pads. These are small shoulder pads and they shouldn't be more than $1 each, really. So I was a little bit shocked at the price for that. And then we've got a 2 centimeter strip of batting or wool for the sleeve heads. This is very important because we're going to put that sort of in here so that when the sleeve rolls over, it gives it a really nice round and soft shape. And we only need a strip of that now at Joann's. You can get 1/8 of a meter, so I just got what I had to. And there's one thing that I'm doing slightly different, so no big deal, but they suggest that you buy some poplin as well, or use a poplin rest for the pockets. And I'm of course going to use this stuff because I didn't use satin and I want this to look the same. So I'm just going to use this fabric, but you could, if you use satin, have extra poplin for the pockets because it's not very comfy to go into a satin pocket. That's the reason why they say poplin. So I'm cutting out first my main fabric, which is the front mirror image, so left and right. That's over here, put on already. And then the back, which is automatically mirror image, isn't it? Because what I've done here, when I put this out, I put it together. So we've got a fold on the edge here. We've got a selvage. I made it nice and smooth and I put it on. Now, before we get going here, there's one thing that if you have a nap, that means like just feel it. Just feel it. So if you're feeling it and it's smooth in one direction, that's the direction all your fabric has to lie. In my case, there's a nap. So if I did it the other way around, it's like some resistance underneath my fingers. That's not good. So you want to be with the nap here and put it all lie in one direction. And then we've got the sleeves, and the sleeve comes in 2 parts, an upper and an under sleeve or lower sleeve or whatever you want to call it. So it's got 2 parts. And then here we've got the upper collar, the under collar, the collar stand, which I will need twice, and the yoke, which we need once in lining and once in shell, it says. And then I've also got the pocket welts here, and I cut those 2 times. I will also cut my lips or welts for the little buttonholes we're going to do. But I'm going to do that later with the rest in a separate video, so you get a really good idea of how that's done. We're going to divvy it all out for you. So the one thing that you need to make sure when you're cutting your stuff out is that your arrow, which is the direction of the grain, and you've got that here and there, that you take out your tape measure and you literally measure from the edge to your arrow. Like here's 19, and then you go on the other side and that's also 19, so that's straight. Okay, so that's what you do with your arrows until it is like lovely and straight. The other thing is, of course, that the weft here, which goes across here, you have got the same thing. You need to have that straight, so your sleeve actually will sit fairly straight on that. Now, one tip for cutting out is that you always want to cut so that your pattern is on the right hand side of you, and then you're cutting from the left so that you can lift up the fabric a little bit. Now, what I've done here already, and I'm using my fabric weights, I didn't want to pin it. My pins just bent. I've got embroidery pins. I can pin anything on. So what I do is I fairly much cut across here. And then I also cut across this line here and then across there. And the reason I do that is that when I've just cut this lot out in a minute, I can just swivel this round and then I can work it so that I can always cut from the left without like getting into trouble like having to do this. Make sure that when something is on the fold that you are directly on the fold to get this done right. So I've done one of my collars. I need that twice. What I do straight away is I mark my centers. You know, always a good idea. If you don't need it later, well, no harm, no foul, but try to do that straight away. And the next pattern piece I'm putting straight next to it. waste not, want not. I'm using a very expensive wool. This is like super good stuff. So the last thing I want is to waste any, because I kind of think I would like to make the Utah skirt to go with this. So let's see if I'm gonna get around to doing that before I send it off to my little model, and then I can show you pictures of that on Instagram and on Facebook, where you can join me, of course, and you can see what it looked like on her. But for the sew along, we've got not the finished object, obviously, because you're keen to get going. Right, there we are. So I've got my under collar here, and then I'm just working my way along, making sure that I don't waste any fabric. Like this is fairly close together, and down here it's fairly close together as well. Put this on, put your weight on, and just keep cutting it out. Now we can swivel around all the individual pieces as well. So it's always easier to cut from the left, especially if you have these really long lines. It's just better for a right-handed person. If you're left-handed, of course, it's exactly the other way around. And now we're ready with all of this. Make sure that everywhere that you needed a mark, you've also put a mark on. That would be, say, on the sleeves. Where are all my sleeves? Here on the sleeves, we have got these markings at the top. Yeah, and you want to make sure that you put a mark in for that. It makes it easier to put the sleeve in later. And we can just sort those out. Anyway, I've got all my pieces together for my upper material, and I can now get on and cut my lining out. Now I've already opened up the fabric for you. And when you're cutting these out, make very sure that you have your pattern piece, which we prepared in a way so that if it sits on the right side of the fabric, it'll be perfect. Now, do not think it's all over if you cut this out wrong and you cut it on the left side of the fabric. All it means is that you have to work the slit in the back here the other way around. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut the backs out first. It's a very busy pattern, this check. So the only thing I'm paying attention to is that both of these lie in this straight line. Everything else I don't pay attention to. I just leave it as it is. So I'm just going to cut these out now. And again, it's easier if you cut it from the left if you can. If you can't, it doesn't really matter too much, but it is just easier. And here again, you can see how I move the fabric pieces around so that I can stay cutting from the left, and well, if it's easier from the right, in some places I do, but most of the time I try to stick to the left-hand side. Now I've cut out the backs, we can cut the next bit and see what I can get out of this one. I'm gonna cut my sleeve from that. The sleeve now does not have to be in line with that line here that we will have on the lower edge, and I want this all to line up. So I think it's probably best to cut the sleeve out of this little bit here, and then I'm going to just fold this over and see if I can make that. Oh, I haven't checked for a nap actually. Oh, it's right. Just right. So now I'm going to cut out the sleeve here as well. Make sure this all lines up. This doesn't really, so my check needs to line up. Oh, I love this fabric. It's going to be absolutely stunning. And I'm going to put my sleeve on here, and it just about fits on. So I cut this one out on the fold. And here as well, what I'm doing is cutting from the left, and then you can kind of swivel your fabric round to cut more. And then at the end, don't forget that you need to snip everywhere where you've got a marking for when you put the sleeve in later. It makes it a little bit easier. And that's that one. Now I'm going to put the rest on bit by bit for this stuff. So now I folded this over, so get the fold again. The important thing is that I put, let me just demonstrate that here, that I put the end of my front piece, just taking out one of the back pieces here, it doesn't matter which one you do. So if you have a look here, that needs to be on the same line, and you can see here that's what I'm doing, so that these lines will line up when I put the side seams together. That's all. There's nothing to it. It's not difficult. That's all I have to watch out for. The sleeve, again, I look for nothing because nobody sees it. We'll get in however we can get it in. And then we've got an outer and an inner pocket, and we've got this little bit here for the shoulder. That yoke piece needs to be on the fold. So we've got the inner pocket we need twice. We've got the, so I've got that one twice. Outer pocket twice. There we go. I just put that one straight. And again, for pockets like this, it doesn't matter where you put them, as long as you put them on straight. And again, if there's a nap, watch out for that. And that's it really. Is there anything else? Oh yes. We want a strip, don't we? 3 centimeters wide, 12 centimeters long, so that we can do that little loop. And I just want to show you this quick. I've just realized that I didn't cut the lining shorter, so I've just done it here. So make sure that you cut the lining that little bit shorter that you marked on your pattern, and then that when you put on your sleeve here, that you do the same, that you mark this up so that it is a little bit shorter so it doesn't hang out afterwards. And again, it doesn't matter really. If you cut from the right because it's just more convenient, okay, but then I go back to cutting from the left as a priority. And once you've cut out the yoke, the shoulder part, I think they call it shoulder in Ottobre, what you want to do is mark the center back. And now we're going to look at the interfacing, and you can see here in your book, when you look at it, all the gray stuff should be interfaced. It says, cut interfacings for areas shaded in gray on small scale patterns and fuse them into place. I think I want it to be a fairly firm jacket. So I'm using my woven interfacing here for this, and I've got my paper out. So we're going to interface the entire front and get, oh no, we can't get it out. So maybe, I'm such a stinger as well. Although I never really stinge on good fabric. That's something I don't do. I'm just like thinking, can I get this out? Will this, no, there's absolutely no way, is there? Or, yeah, that'll do. Here, it's not really that important that I catch it. Now, the other thing that you can do when you cut out your interfacing is you don't necessarily need to cut it with the seam allowance. And the reason for that is because it doesn't need to be so thick. So I'm just thinking whether I should just cut my seam allowances off this. Of course, if I use the pattern again, I'll probably forget that I cut the seam allowances off and then have a disaster. And that's not what we want. So, okay, I'm just going to move this over so it fits on a little bit better. That way it fits on. And that means that I don't have so much thickness in my seams, which I think is quite important with a winter jacket like this. Now, what I've done here is I've just gone round with a vanishing, disappearing marker, and I mark my 1 centimeter seam allowance, and I can just cut that back. Now then, in this area here, if you're using the violin like cut back, then you can do this also really neatly. Cut yourself a really neat curve, because you can use this then as basically like a template, and you just stitch right around this edge of that. It makes that a little bit easier, but of course not if it's jackety boo. We don't want that, so it's got to be like really nice and neat in this area. And now rinse and repeat for this piece, and I don't mind that it hangs over the edge and I don't have enough because I'm going to cut it back anyway, so that's all good. And you can see here that I don't really like pinning very much. Pinning is not my thing. I just hold it down or use a weight. The next thing now is to do the collar, and for this coat they suggest that we are going to put the upper collar with interfacing. They gave you the interfacing that's perfect for that, which is the one that kind of moves. So I need this collar once on the fold, so put that on there. And there we've got the collar stand. I need that as well. That will go on here. Yoke goes on here as well. So we've got upper collar, collar stand, and yoke, and then half of this should be stabilized as well. So I'm just going to fold it in half. So I cut 2 of these, maybe along there. So now I'm going to cut this out. I've cut my shoulder out, and because this stuff is really light, you don't need to cut away the seam allowances and stuff. I think that's why it's also a good thing to use this. I don't want to get confused now about which collar is which collar, under or upper. So I make very sure that up to this stage, until I have it ironed on, I keep my collars together like that. Okay, so keep this as one piece, keep this as a separate piece so that you don't get confused. And now I also want to prepare the interfacing for my back piece here. You can see that very nicely here along there. There you go. And what I don't want to do though is I don't want to do it like they do it in here. It's a very homemade way of doing it. Industrial way is not like that. So what you want to do really is cut yourself 2 6 centimeter, what is that in inches? Not quite 2.5 inches. You can do 2.5 inches, let's face it. Oh man, inches drive me crazy. Anyway, what we do is we're just going to put it over the fold line so that when this folds, you get this really beautiful edge. This makes it brilliant. That's what you want. So we're just cutting 2 strips on that length, and I made them 6 centimeters wide. And then we're also going to do this on the sleeve. But you're not going to do it if individually here like they suggest. What we're going to do is we're going to join the upper and the under sleeve first, and then we're going to put the strip on so that you don't end up with more than one piece. And I'm just going to very quickly see what width we need for that and let you know. So 11 inches long, which is 28 centimeters. And again, we're going to do it like 6 centimeters wide. And once we've joined our sleeve together, then we put it on. So I put this on with the extra bits of interfacing we need. And I think we have actually cut everything out. Yes, we've done it all. Oh, that's fantastic. Now we're ready to start ironing all the pieces on. I'm going to do my collar first. Just make very sure that it goes on the underside of the collar, not the upper side, obviously. And then afterwards we can trim off what stands over. And very important is that you don't leave the iron on too little. You need to really give this some heat here, yeah? And then we'll turn it over and we do it again with lots of steam so that we make sure that this is on securely. Just trim along where your interfacing is still sticking out. And I have to say this is way better than I thought it would be, this interfacing. So I stand corrected. This is really good as well. This stuff really works. Very happy. So that's the collar. So now we know this. You can still keep it on if you like, but you should remember now that the upper collar has the interfacing on in this case. And now we're going to do the little pockets. So I'm only going to put my interfacing on one side. Right, put my iron back on. I don't want any of this to come back off, so that's really important that it's not coming off. But then we really can get going. So next time I see you guys, we're going to be starting to sew it together. So we're going to do pockets and the slit and the buttonholes. I mean, goodness me, that's going to be fantastic. And now this next step here is that we're going to iron the interfacing onto the collar stand as well. And we don't use any steam for that. Just saying. You can use the steam if you do it from the other side when you want to give it a little bit of oomph, but you don't do that now. We're doing it without steam. That is so nice. I'm loving this. And now we're also going to iron the interfacing onto the yoke, the back yoke, and same applies. We're going to work very steady. Keep it standing on there. Scary. And last not least, we're going to put the interfacing, the really cool interfacing, onto this front piece here. And I'm going to take that really super duper interfacing that I've got, which is really fantastic for this. So need to just move it so, and you can see the difference on this one, how much better this will, how much easier this will be to sew along here. And it's not like the plasticky stuff that kind of shimmies all over the place where you have to trim stuff. So. And that's it, we're fully prepared. So next time we can get right into it and start sewing. We're going to first prep up the front piece with the buttonholes and the pockets, and then the back as well, of course, where we have the slit. Now, if you have never seen one of my videos before, I have a sewing academy under frocksandfrolics.com where you can find all my patterns and loads of sewing courses. And the good news is most of it is free. So you can learn how to put in zips. There are gazillions of methods, of course, for zips, and you can learn all of them in there, at least all the ones I know of. And there are courses which are also free for beginners where you learn all about hemming and seams and all the really basic stuff. There's a lot to look at, so pop on over, frocksandfrolics.com. The Sewing Academy will really help you out if you get stuck with your methods, and I hope to see you there soon. And of course here on YouTube next time when we're going to do buttonholes, pockets and slits. See you there. Bye bye.